Alright, so today's video is on Shining Force. What the hell is Shining Force? Where the hell am I going to put my drink? So it doesn't block the... There we go, that's good enough, huh? Yeah, Shining Force. It's a game from my youth. So I was reliving my youth by playing this game that I had played on the Sega Genesis. It came out in 1993, and I probably was playing it shortly after that, or in that year, 1993. And I just loved the game when I was a kid. And I don't know how, but for some reason I became aware of it recently. Like something reminded me of it. And I looked at ways I could play it, and it actually turned out you could just download it on your phone and play it for free with ads. You got to go through one annoying ad, and you can play it. So every decade, I guess. Well, I went from 1993, and then playing it as what, early teenager, 13, I guess I was then. And then I hadn't thought of it until I was in the Army in, I don't know what exactly it was. It had to have been 2006. And yeah, I think it was probably somewhere around 2006 or late 2005. But anyway, we went to a big field exercise, and a guy in my platoon had brought his Game Boy Advance because, you're out there in tents and shit, you got nothing to do unless you have a portable game. I mean, obviously you're working most of the time, but at night before bed, you're hour or so before you go to bed or whatever. You have nothing to do, so he brought his Game Boy Advance, and it turned out that they had remastered it or remade it, or whatever you want to call it, and put it on the Game Boy Advance. And I was just shocked, I hadn't thought about this thing, in what, 20 years, and so, or I guess 15 years at that point, and I was all excited, and he let me use it, and I played it on that field exercise, and then I hadn't thought of it again until now, 2025. But anyway, I got it on my phone, and I've been playing it, here and there. I finished a playthrough, and I mean, I just really like the game. I did one where I played maybe 3/4 of the way through, and then I had some other ideas on different people I wanted to use, so I started a new game, and I played that all the way through, and now I started another game. It's kind of crazy, a little bit obsessive, because on that app that you can download, it actually has 1 and 2, and I don't think I've ever played 2. So I need to get on to playing 2 at some point. But I just enjoy 1 so much. I wanted to try different characters that I maybe never used when I was young. Yeah, it's just been fun reliving my childhood. And so it's a really simple game. Even for that time, I think it was intentionally made as a simple game. It's basically geared towards kids. So I don't think if I discovered the game, forget about graphics and stuff like that. Who cares about that? But if I discovered a game like that now, even if it had updated graphics and stuff, I don't think I'd really play it because it's not complex enough for me. I like stuff that has pretty complex systems and shit. Obviously, now that I'm older, the main thing games I play now is just historical based things. Paradox makes these historical games. Europa Universalis, Crusader Kings. Crusader Kings 2 might be my favorite game of all time. I've played so much of that. Bannerlord, played plenty of that. So this is just pure nostalgia, It's just, I loved the game because I loved it when I was a kid. And so the thing about nostalgia, I've been thinking about nostalgia because I've kind of I'm of different minds, which is a lot of the way I am with a lot of things, which, people see it as wishy-washy, but to me, I just see it as intelligent, being able to see the different facets of things. Because I see people particularly a lot of people that fancy themselves as sophisticated, like to really harp on the fact that nostalgia is bad. And I don't really get it, what they're talking about. There's nothing inherent about nostalgia that's either good or bad. It's just a thing with humans, it's just part of being human, to be nostalgic. Now, like everything, it can be bad. It can be bad if, like, here's a way it's bad for me, I know, is when I get nostalgic about, like, just my childhood in general, or the really bad one is about, my first girlfriend. It doesn't make me feel good, like, pining for my childhood when objectively my life's better now. I'm with better people. My family now that I've built is better. My life is better. I'm better off economically. I'm better off in the types of people that are around me. So it just doesn't really make a lot of logical sense to be nostalgic about my childhood. So I try to avoid that, even though it's inevitable. No matter what your childhood was like, there's certain parts of it that are just like deeply a part of you. And there's good memories and there's nostalgia, and that's fine. But if you're just letting nostalgia take over to the point where you're glorifying something that was objectively not as good as now, that's just going to make you depressed. Like, you're sitting there thinking, like, oh, the good times are over, when they're really not. The good times, in my life are right now. So, I don't know, this might not apply to everybody. This might be just me and my mental issues. I'm a little bit, prone to depression and stuff, so I've kind of recognized some thought patterns that aren't really good for me. And one of them is, like, I really tend towards nostalgia and allowing it to manifest itself in a negative way, where, like, nothing's ever as good as the good old days and stuff like that. So yes, that manifestation of nostalgia is bad. But nostalgia itself, I think it's just a neutral thing. I don't think it's either good or bad. I think it's just part of being human. Like the thing with Shining Force. I love the game because I played it when I was a kid, and I loved it when I was a kid. I think that's okay. But anyway, my intention here is to actually talk about Shining Force, so hopefully you've played it. Hopefully you feel the same way about it as I do. You played it in your youth. But I see all these tier lists on characters, and it is interesting. I do like to see, like, how you can build the best team and which characters are the best and stuff. But I'm not going to put it in terms of a tier list. Mainly because, I don't know, I feel like it's kind of like artificial. Like, we've created this paradigm of the tier list, and so now this is the paradigm in which we have to discuss everything. And I don't necessarily think about it like that. I haven't sat here and said, like, oh, this guy's really good and this guy's really good, but which one's better and why, and, let's break it down to the last statistic and find out which one's better. I'm just not interested in doing that, but I am interested in discussing, which are my favorite characters and which ones I think are powerful and stuff like that. So it's not a tier list, it's just a discussion. And sort of in what ways I agree with a lot of the things I've read or watched about Shining Force, and what are maybe some ways where my experience is different from what other people have said. So, the whole question of whether to grind and promote at level 20, or whether to just go ahead and go to the game and promote at level 10. In this particular game, I've surprised myself, but I've fallen heavily on the side of not grinding, which is surprising because I love grinding, actually. That's like one of the things I like about role-playing games. I was super addicted to this MUD back in the 90s. I don't even know if you know what a MUD is, but it's basically like a text-based role-playing game. and there's no like point. There's no beginning and end. It's just grinding is all it is. Just straight grind. You just constantly grind, and they're set up, or at least the one I played, but I think a lot of them are similar, is it's basically set up to take like years to max your character, or to truly max your character. Like, I'm not sure I never did, and I played for years, pretty obsessively. So that's the way they're set up, is to be a really long-term thing and just be super addictive, and like it just you basically just grind. So I like grinding, but in Shining Force it's different though. The grind becomes like really tedious and monotonous, and it's really unnecessary because the game is just not that hard, and it's not like a MUD where the grind is the point. There is a beginning and an end, and the grind just isn't that fun. What's fun is actually going through the game. So in any case, I've come down because I've tried it. That's actually what I'm doing on this third one, is I'm doing the grind to 20, and it is just freaking boring as shit. It is so tedious. Now there's a couple of exceptions I'll get to where I don't think you necessarily need to grind, but there are a couple where you can basically promote at 20 without even grinding because of a particular way the game works. But anyway, so with that said, I might even not remember all the characters. This is just going to be off the top of my head while I'm driving. But based on level 10 promotion, here's what I think of the characters. So the main character, I think, is not bad, but he's actually kind of disappointing. Like, you in a lot of games, like, the main character is the biggest badass. And that's, because you're doing a power fantasy. You're, like, the hero, and you're the ass whipper. And everybody else is just, your assistants or whatever. But in Shining Force, that's not the case. There's, like, several characters that are better than the main character. So it's a little bit disappointing, but he's not terrible. But it can become frustrating that he's not that great because, his dying ends the battle. And so you kind of have to, like, really be careful at certain points. There are certain points in the game where he is kicking ass, and you can go ahead and get some levels with him. But then there are other points in the game where you have to really be careful with him, and that causes him to fall behind almost inevitably. And then, as others have pointed out, he really has a huge lull in the middle of the game. Like, he starts off the game good. He's one of the better ones. And he ends the game, like, really good. I mean, you still have to be careful because, again, he's the only one that can lose the battle for you. But he gets the special weapons, and he's pretty much, he might actually be the strongest character in the game at that one point at the very end when he gets the weapons. But in the middle, he gets surprisingly bad. It's you start to really, like, struggle to have him keep up. You have to, like, baby him. And that just reminded me, like, when you talk about grinding in this game, I assume that what we're talking about is egressing from battles and redoing the whole battle. But there's another sort of kind of, like, grind even within a game where you're not grinding. I wouldn't call it grinding, but it's basically intentionally getting the last hit with certain people because you don't want them to fall behind. Some people, basically they call that babying. And your main character actually has to be babied a little bit in the middle of the game, or he's not going to keep up. He's not going to keep up just organically. He's just there's a real, like, weapon lull with him. You start off the beginning of the game and everyone's weapon sucks, so it doesn't matter that his weapon sucks. But then in the middle of the game, people start to get really good weapons, like the knights get power spears and stuff, and his weapons just still suck, like, because basically his weapons suck until he gets the special weapons at the end. And so in the middle, when his weapon sucks and everybody else's weapon's good, he sucks. You pretty much have to like struggle to have him keep up. Okay, next one. May. I just think that all of these centaurs are nondescript. I think it's like you kind of like you feel obligated to keep a couple of them because there are special weapons. Like the power spear is awesome, and then there's the halberd, and then there's the Valkyrie. So I think like 2 spear/lance users, it kind of just makes sense to have them. But besides Pell and Arthur, they're pretty much just like nondescript. They're just like there, you know. I know a lot of people like May. They kind of put her into a category like just below Pell, if you're talking about level 10 promotion, and just below Arthur if you're talking about level 20 promotion. But that hasn't been my experience. To me, she's just another nondescript one. So we'll might as well just get Ken out of the way too. They're just nondescript. They're good. Especially Pell. We'll get to him. Well, maybe we should just... I'm not bound by any rules, so we don't have to go in chronological order. Let's just talk about Pell then. We'll just talk about all the knights. So, May, Ken, Vanker, Ernest, nondescript. Arthur, completely useless in the context we're talking about. Yes, he's one of the best characters in the game, maybe the best character in the game if you do the grind. But we already decided we're not doing the grind. So he's out entirely. So Arthur out, May, Ken, Ernest, Vanker, pick one. Whoever you just like for whatever reason. You like the way they look, you like their name, anything. Just pick them if you've already decided you're going to have that slot there as a knight. Pell, though, is one of the best characters in the game. And I think it's just crazy that anybody says that he's not one of the best characters in the game because, oh, well, you know, he's not a grind. If you do a grind, honestly, I think even if you did a grind, he'd be one of the best ones. I think people like over-exaggerate that just because somebody requires a grind, that automatically means they're better than someone that doesn't require a grind. But in any case, we're talking, as we said, in the context of no grind. And so in that context, I think everybody agrees that Pell is incredible. He's one of the best characters in the game. There's definitely a point. He definitely has his day, like, and it's basically when you first recruit him, where he's the best character on your team. There's no way around it. Unless you've been doing some crazy grinding and everybody else is just way over-leveled compared to him at that point. Maybe. But certainly if you're just going through the game, he's going to be the best guy. And in my experience, he continues to basically be either the best guy or competitive for the best guy all throughout the game. So he's way up there in my opinion. Archers, all useless. That's one area where the developers of the game just screwed up. The archers, none of them are worth anything. They do get the elfin arrow, which gives them better range than anyone, other than mages. I mean, some mages can attack from that range too, but other physical damage dealers, they have the best range. And, you know, of course you can use that to your advantage in certain situations. But I don't think that advantage outweighs just the fact that they're just weak. They need to attack a lot stronger than they do. But it's a tough design task that the developers had. Is you give them all this range and you're going to make them attack hard, and the only downside to them would have been their defense, but their lack of defense is largely mitigated by the fact that they have such range. So it's a difficult class to balance, and the way they went with it, it just turns out they're useless. Healers, you know, start with Low. Again, I kind of think the healers are nondescript. I mean, Low is the ultimate nondescript healer. He's like generic healer. And then you have Chris, who has good defense, and also does get aura. And then you have Tarasso, who he's the best healer, clearly, but he just comes too late. And so I've never used him. Because he comes so late that at that point I've kind of become attached to my team. But I guess you really shouldn't be too attached to a healer, so you should probably just take like Chris until you get to Tarraso and then just get Tarraso. I don't think Chris has good defense, but when are you ever asking your healer to tank, you know? I mean, what Tarraso is good at, getting like Aura 4 and a shitload of magic points and stuff, and that's without even putting any work into him. He just like, comes like that. I don't think that that's outweighed by anything from any other healer. And then we have Gong, who is a huge disappointment to me because I love the monk class. That's like my class in role-playing games. That's what I always play. And they decided, instead of just make him like an ass-kicking martial arts guy, they went with a different interpretation of monk, which I think like by now in 2025, the battle between what a monk was going to be is over, and now it really is just a martial arts ass kicker in role-playing game. But back then there were kind of two visions of monks. There was the kung fu guy, but then there was the more like monk as a religious figure. And so he's kind of like a cleric, really. He's like a fighter. He's like a crappy fighter that does crappy healing. You know, he's like a jack of all trades, master of none type thing, and that's what they went with Gong. So yes, he's a better fighter than the other healers. He does do more damage, but his damage starts to suck pretty bad as the game goes on. Like in the beginning, he's a viable fighter, but then his fighting just kind of like tapers off, like after promotion, and you're just left with a crappy healer at that point. He's like the worst in terms of pure healing out of any of the healers. So he's a cool character, he's a cool idea, and then I hate how his animation changes after he promotes. He like looks so much better, his attack is so much better before promotion. He promotes and all of a sudden he looks like an Egyptian pharaoh or something, and he's doing some magic attack. He's not even doing a punching attack anymore. It's pretty awful. I'm gonna take the opportunity to move into just a discussion of non-weapon fighters, because Gong is a non-weapon fighter. He doesn't use weapons, and so this applies to him, Xylo, and Blue. It also technically applies to Adam, but you get Adam too late. Like, you have to totally just grind like one battle for days at a point where you're almost finished with the game. It's like pointless. I don't know why Adam's even in the game. But with Gong and Xylo and with Blue you do have sort of enough time, but you're gonna have to baby. But you don't, even without grinding, you don't have to promote Gong or Xylo or Blue, but mostly Gong and Xylo because you get them early enough. You just don't have to promote them until 20, even without grinding. You have plenty of time, and because they don't use weapons, they don't need to promote to get the higher level weapons. Because in this game, you reach a certain point, like mid-game, where in order to upgrade your weapon, you have to promote. The upgraded weapons are only for the promoted class. So these non-weapon users have a special situation where they can just simply not promote, and they can still just keep going through the game. They'll keep up because their attack improves better in their unpromoted class than it does in their promoted class. So, and that's the whole reason why people grind, you know, because the stat improvements are actually better before promotion. I think that's just a big design flaw. It just shouldn't work like that whatsoever. But you can go ahead and take advantage of that with Gong and Xylo. Especially Gong, you're going to have to consciously like feed him kills and stuff. But Xylo is so powerful that you just go through the game normally, and just organically, he'll just be able to just go ahead and get to level 20 without promotion, and then you go ahead and promote him, and he won't fall behind at all or anything. He'll like catch up to the other people, even though they promoted at 10. So there's no question that's the way to develop those characters. Like Xylo is one of the better characters in the game, by the way. So you want to use him, unless you've already used him and you're doing a playthrough without him. But certainly in your first playthrough, which in a lot of people's case will be their only playthrough, you definitely want to use Xylo because he's great. But what you don't want to do is promote him at 10, because if you promote him at 10, you're going to end up getting rid of him. Because you're going to be like, oh my god, this guy whips total ass, he's freaking awesome. Because this is what happened to me when I was a kid, the first time I played. Like, oh yeah, he's awesome, he's a werewolf, it's so cool. He kicks ass, he like does so much damage. And then you promote him at 10, and he gets like the worst promotion sickness. Like, he is freaking terrible at level 1 promoted if you promote him at 10. Like, you need to promote the dude at 20 just to get past the promotion sickness. And obviously he'll be much stronger in the long run too. So might have to do a part 2 of this one, because I'm already at the school to pick up my kid, and we didn't really get to everything. Super long video, and we didn't really even get to... Did we even get to half? I guess we probably got to half the characters, but maybe part 2, we'll talk about the rest of the characters maybe tomorrow. See ya.